Today we're looking at an interview between Liam Tuffs and a prominent Imam from Britain. The cleric in question is a moderate Muslim who says all the right things. But is he genuine? Is he someone we can take at face value?
Any information I want on Islam, I'm in good company today.
I'll try my best. We're taught that half of knowledge is saying, I don't know. If you don't know the answer to something, say, I don't know. And that actually means you're a very knowledgeable person.
I think you have wisdom confused with knowledge. Wisdom is having the good sense to admit when you don't know something. Knowledge is having the actual information on the subject.
This is my message, and it's not just a message I'm talking about. You can look at my past, you can look at my track record, you can look at the work I've been doing for years. It's try your best to be a nice person and help other people to be nice people as well. Many people within the white British working class community are looking at the Muslims and thinking they're terrorists, they're groomers, they're all the different attacks which we see left, right and centre. And people within the Muslim community are looking, they're Islamophobes, they hate us, they want to burn our mosques down, they want to kick us out of the country. And then when you get them together over a cup of tea, and they start to realise that, we've all got bills to pay, the cost of living crisis, we're all struggling a bit. Even the middle class now, you can't go on as many holidays as you.
Does he really believe that our main grievances with Islam are because of socioeconomic reasons and that it isn't because we envision a future for our children where Islam could be the majority? How is that not in his thought process?
The Southport massacre. He was sold to the British public as a Welsh choir boy. We know that Al-Qaeda manuals were found in his room, as were ricin, poison. So in his mind, he wanted to cause as much terror as humanly possible. Would you agree that Axel Rudakabana was an Islamic terrorist because of the Al-Qaeda manuals?
So before that, the answer is no. But before that, don't forget he was sold as something else before that. He was sold as a Syrian or Iraqi refugee who's recently arrived on a small boat coming over. And I think that's what kicked the riots off.
He was sold online by some dodgy account as a refugee, but he was sold to the British public
from official sources
by the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
That's unforgivable.
Yeah.
I mean, lying to the nation like that over something so serious. I mean, for me, honesty is the best policy, which is why we're here today.
Yeah.
And he should have been completely honest about that. But yeah, I hear you. But the Al-Qaeda manual, does that qualify him as an Islamist?
Apparently he had works of Hitler as well. Does that make him a Nazi?
This feels like strike one to me here because he should know why Hitler literature is so popular in the Middle East, and it is absolutely connected to the horrible things that the Quran says about Jews. If you don't think there's a connection there, you're not being a very honest person.
I've heard rumours that he's been asking to pray as a Muslim in prison, but then I've heard other people say, no, there's no, I've spoken to the chaplain in that prison, he said, no, it's a load of rubbish.
What reason could the Muslim community possibly have to disassociate themselves from someone like this? I wonder.
Personally, I don't think he was Muslim. Was he inspired by Al-Qaeda? I think definitely he was by the looks of it. Does he love death and killing and murder? Yeah. Can I explain his actions? No, not at all. But I remember when we were watching the news, my daughter came in as we were watching it unfold. At that point, they'd only announced two of the deaths. And my daughter, she was 14 at the time. She said, "Dad, what's happened?" And I said, "Yes, a girls' dance school in Southport's been attacked." And she's like, "Why?" And I didn't have an answer for her.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. So a lot of people ask me about these attacks, and the way I describe it is it's almost like the Muslim community feels a double slap. Whether it's the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester being blown up, whether it's the 7/7 attacks on the buses, whenever there's even if it was in the name of Islam and perpetrated by Muslims, with this Southport stabbing, there's still a lot of unanswered questions in the air, and time will tell. Personally, I don't think he's Muslim. But if he was a Muslim, does that now give us a green card? Okay, we can smash the Southport Mosque up.
He wants to pretend like it would make no difference. It means that all of those people's assumptions were correct.
We can protest outside the mosques and smash the city centres up. You see what I'm saying? Even if the guy was a Muslim, and you've got a picture of him with a black flag and holding the Quran, and?
Well, I think it's because there's been a sequence of events, atrocities, barbaric slaughtering of innocent people in the name of Islam, shouting Allah Akbar as they do it. And just for the record, what does Allah Akbar actually mean?
God is the greatest.
So can you agree that it's a very bizarre thing to be shouting as you're maiming and torturing and slaughtering people?
Are you talking about the Southport attack?
No, just in general, because we've had lots, haven't we?
Yeah.
And you never hear someone saying Christ is King as they're trying to behead somebody. It's Allah Akbar. I mean, it's a term that actually puts the fear of God in people. If I was to hear it out loud in public,
Yeah.
It would certainly make me feel uneasy. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, Allahu Akbar. It's a very widely used term amongst Muslims. When you get devils and terrorists and extremists abusing it, like the likes of ISIS, for example,
So do you denounce ISIS?
without a shadow of a doubt,
Do you denounce Al-Qaeda?
without a shadow of a doubt, and I have done for years.
Do you denounce Hamas?
When they're killing innocent people, of course, anybody, whatever name you give yourself, if you're killing innocent people, that is not on. And the stories, which I'll be honest with you, when I went to Iraq, I thought that the Western media might have been exaggerating the brutality of ISIS and what they did. When I arrived there, I found out that they've been under-exaggerating it, like literally evil personified.
To my knowledge, ISIS, Hamas, Al-Qaeda, they're just rebrands of the same thing.
Yeah. I think in all fairness, I don't think you can put Hamas in the same category as ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And I'm being honest with you now, because there's a political background to Hamas. You know, they came out in elections and et cetera, et cetera. So there is a difference.
What is the difference between the Houthis overthrowing a democratic government to take control of Yemen? What is the difference between what's happening in Syria and how ISIS tried to establish a caliphate over it? How are those two causes not political, but Hamas is? This is extremely disingenuous. Strike 2.
So are they Muslims?
Now, this is a question, I've been asked this question before, and I'm glad you've asked me that because I want to explain. So it's very, very difficult to put somebody outside the boundaries of Islam. And for somebody to do actions which are un-Islamic, like murdering innocent people, like drinking alcohol, like eating pork, like whatever the sin is, that doesn't necessarily put somebody outside of Islam. What puts somebody outside of Islam is areas of creed. When you don't believe or you claim something which is outside the boundaries of Islamic creed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So say for example, if there's a Muslim rapist, they're a Muslim rapist. They're still Muslim.
Especially the offenders who use this Quranic verse to justify it. Also forbidden are married women, except female captives in your possession. This is Allah's commandment to you. Lawful to you are all beyond these, as long as you seek them with your wealth in a legal marriage, not in fornication. Give those you have consummated marriage with their due dowries. It is permissible to be mutually gracious regarding the set dowry. Surely Allah is all-knowing, all-wise.
Raping somebody does not mean that you're excommunicated from the faith, what you believe in. Am I making sense? Mm-hmm. You've committed a crime. It's anti-Islamic what you've done. Same with ISIS. Their deeds are anti-Islamic. But for anybody to make a claim about the belief in their hearts is very, very dangerous territory. And ironically, it's a weapon what they use to call everybody else disbelievers. Do you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. This is a weapon of terrorists, this excommunication. That, like many people within ISIS, they'd consider somebody like me to be a non-Muslim. He's not Muslim. I wouldn't do the same to them. Do you believe Osama bin Laden was Muslim? I have to say yes.
You have to say yes because if you said anything different, you would be ridiculed by the Muslim world.
Were his actions Muslim? Were his actions Islamic? Completely the opposite of Islam.
Yeah, man, it's the complete opposite. He totally wasn't practicing Islam, and half of the Muslim world that reveres him, they don't know what Islam is either. You, the guy that was born in Britain, raised in Britain, and now practices Islam that he learned in his teenage years, you're the one who knows better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it upset or does it sicken you that Osama bin Laden was a Muslim?
Thoroughly. Not just that he was a Muslim, that he was doing the things that he did in the name of Islam.
Would you not be in danger for speaking like this in their space?
Possibly. But I think there's also a chance that we over exaggerate the threat and the danger as well. And I think this idea that we have potential terrorists running around everywhere. So when you go past your local mosque and you see people in traditional clothing, I think there is a tendency to just assume, they're extremists. There are conservative Muslims who are actually quite mainstream and actually quite moderate in their beliefs. Actually, these are the majority of Muslims. We do have some fruitcakes. We've got some lunatics. And I don't know if we're going to come on to Tommy Robinson now.
I would want to deflect to Tommy Robinson as well if I got caught making so many ridiculous statements. Yeah, Osama bin Laden is not practicing Islam properly. Mm-hmm.
I believe that a big part of why Tommy Robinson speaks the way he does about Islam, because what he's saying is, I don't have an issue with Muslims, I have an issue with Islam, the faith. It's not about the people, it's about the belief. I don't think that's fair. However, if I consider Tommy Robinson's context and his background in Luton, and he's grown up around Al-Muhajirun, who were literally the door for ISIS.
This is an important part to take note of. This explains why Tommy Robinson holds the views that he does towards Islam. He basically grew up with the people who became ISIS.
What does Islam actually teach?
What does Islam teach? Well,
In short.
the base message is, and this was taught by the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, that there is no Lord except God. It's all about the concept of one God. And we're taught that this is nothing new. It's not a new religion. It's actually the old and the ancient religion. And it was the religion of Jesus and what he taught. And it was the religion of Moses and what he taught.
The hubris here is outstanding. He actually wants us to believe that what Muslims are practicing today is actually what the Jews were practicing 4,000 years ago. The Jews and the Christians just added a whole bunch of human rights and the inability for someone to consummate marriages with 9-year-olds into their texts.
It's understanding that we're in this world for a short time. And to do whatever good you can do while you're here, before you leave, because you will be judged. If you don't get found out and caught in this life for the harm that you've caused to others, you will be taken into account in the next life.
He forgot to mention about the cheat code where if you kill a Jew on the battlefield, you get 72 virgins and an instant ticket to heaven.
And what does the word Islam mean? I've heard it means submission.
Right, so it means, but it's got lots of connotations. So the amazing thing about Arabic, I won't get too complex, but the amazing thing about
You
Arabic
don't confuse me.
is words are part of families. And so Islam has the root letters Salama.
Yeah, man. Homicide and suicide are all from the Aside family. They're all Aside, so that's the same thing.
The other words which come from that have the connotations of it. So you've got salam, which is peace. You've got istislam, which is submission. And you've got salama, which is safety. So it's all these different connotations. So in English, you can't really say it's submission. It is submission, and it's also peace, and it's also safety, and it's all these.
Yeah, you get peace when you submit, and then you become a dhimmi, and everything is safe for you. See how it works? You just gotta submit, and then we find you the peace.
What is taqiyya?
Right, so basically...
Are you lying to me?
I know, I'm not lying to you. But I know, I've told you I'm going to be straight and I'm going to be honest, but I know the meaning of this word, taqiyya. What I do from time to time is I ask my young Muslim students... what you've just said. What is taqiyya? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows what taqiyya is? Seriously, that's going to be your line right now? Most 16-year-olds who access Twitter know what taqiyya is. This is just not believable. Sorry. This is strike 2.5.
Shall I tell you what I've heard it means? I've heard that it's stamped in the Quran that taqiyya means you can lie to get ahead. So you could be sat here pretending that you're quite friendly and you mean no harm, convincingly, but really you're plotting and scheming against me, and it's okay to do that in the eyes of
You know what's amazing,
Allah.
Liam? My plan is so amazing. I've been feeding the homeless for years, all to hide my real plan, and I've been helping people in society for years, and I've been building bridges and relationships and friendships with, and it's all about this big plan to take. Come on.
What do you mean, come on? What do you mean, come on? That is exactly what horrible people do. That is exactly what politicians do. That is exactly what all of the people in power have done to get in power. They have pretended to be good people. Just look at what the progressives are doing to all of our countries in the name of tolerance and inclusion. Is this guy for real?
Describe the Prophet Muhammad to me.
So if we're to talk about the base description of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, it would be mercy.
And is a Muslim man's job to emulate the Prophet Muhammad?
Yes. If you rebel against Islam, you're rebelling against the state. Even
And does that end in death?
even apostasy, yeah. So apostasy, another thing which is similar to insulting the Prophet. Apostasy, if a person leaves Islam. So first and foremost, there's no verse in the Quran which talks about a death penalty for apostates.
He's being extremely disingenuous here. This is strike 3. All we need to do is reference Quran chapter 5 verse 33 to see that apostasy is in fact a death penalty. It may not say so in those explicit words. However, it's very easy to understand what we're looking at and what it's trying to say. Indeed, the penalty for those who wage war against Allah and his messenger and spread mischief in the land is death, crucifixion, cutting off their hands and feet on opposite ends, or exile from the land. This penalty is a disgrace for them in this world, and they will suffer a tremendous punishment in the hereafter.
Did he not behead 100 Jews in one day?
No, not personally.
Welcome to the logic of the Muslim world. Well, guys, we didn't behead him ourselves, so we're really not that bad. We just ordered these other guys to do it. So what's the matter, guys? I didn't do it myself. I'm not some monster.
And the thing is, you're talking about, I think, Bani Qurayza. This was one of the wars in Medina. And those people who were killed, because the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he did engage in war. He did engage in war. He didn't kill anybody himself. This image that he's a warlord, let me ask you a question. All of the battles, and there were several battles throughout the life of the Prophet, him and his companions, the people around him, and all the idol worshippers and the Jews and the disbelievers and everybody else they were fighting on the battlefield, how many people do you think were killed in total during the life of the Prophet? Have a guess.
Oh, I wouldn't know.
Just over 700.
I don't think anyone is really gullible enough to believe that Muhammad only killed 700 men. All we need to do is look a few years after Islam started to take off. We can look at the Battle of Yamama. Here we can see there's tens of thousands of deaths attributed to this one campaign alone. So when Islam tries to tell you that it conquered with friendly words and smiles, it's just not being honest with you.
Was there 100 Jews that were beheaded in the same day?
So back to this. I don't know the exact figures, but the Bani Qurayza.
Did the Prophet Muhammad give the order?
The Bani Qurayza, they were a Jewish tribe from Medina, which is where the Prophet established his state. They were ordered to be killed, but the reason they were ordered to be killed was not because they were Jewish. The reason they were ordered to be killed is because they broke a treaty.
So the Jews would claim that they broke the treaty based on what Muhammad had done to other Jews in the region, which would have been the relatives of this tribe. So they refused to fight for Muhammad, and the only reason this man even talks about a treaty being broken is because of a hadith that they quote by Ibn Kathir that says that a treaty was broken, even though Ibn Kathir is not exactly a reliable source since he comes so much later after the death of Muhammad and after all of the major campaigns.
They broke a treaty, what was in place, where they'd pledged allegiance, and they said that they would be on the side of Muslims, fighting the Muslims who were coming up from a different part of Arabia. The idol worshippers who were coming from a different part of Arabia. And when it came to the crunch, they actually switched sides and gave victory. So they were treason. They switched sides, and so that was the punishment.
Is it true that a whole line of Jews were lined up and the Prophet Muhammad checked to see if the males had pubic hair, and if they did, they were old enough, and they were the ones that got beheaded in front of their female family?
I've not heard that, and it does sound very suspicious.
All right, so we asked ChatGPT about this pubic hair hadith, and this is what it found for us. In Sunan an-Nasa, this is what's reported. On the day that Sa'ad passed judgment on Banu Qurayza, I was a young boy and they were not sure about me, but they did not find any pubic hair, so they let me live, and here I am among you. Now, the historical context for this. The incident occurred after the Battle of the Trench in 627 CE when the Banu Qurayza tribe was accused of treason for allegedly conspiring with the Meccan forces. The judgment was passed by Sa'id ibn Mu'ad, an ally of the Banu Aus tribe, who ruled that the men should be executed and women and children enslaved. Reports vary that the number of men executed, some sources say 400, others say 600 to 900. A commonly cited figure is around 600 to 700. The practice of examining pubic hair to determine maturity reflects the legal and social norms of the time. This method was used to distinguish between those considered adults and those considered minors, impacting their treatment in legal and military matters. If you would like more detailed, blah, blah, blah. So actually what's funny here is that he could have just basically said, well, this was a commonly held historical practice, but instead he's so desperate to deflect from making himself or Islam look bad in any way that he's now going to say, well, I've never heard of this before. I don't know where this could possibly come from. Kind of lame.
It sounds very suspicious.
Is there any chance it could be true?
I can't say. It's not something I've come across, but it sounds very suspicious to me.
Okay. And so because the Prophet Muhammad is considered merciful, is that why Islam is considered by Muslims as the religion of peace?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not just that. Mercy is a common theme throughout Islam. It's a common theme. And this is why when we see terrorism, when we see violence, when we see abuse, it's a very simple rule. So the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, I'm going to teach you a legal maxim now in Islam. Do not commit harm and do not allow harm to be committed. That's it.
It's kind of ridiculous to disprove the stuff he's saying. All I asked ChatGPT was Quran verse where you must fight Christians and Jews. And it says in Quran 9:29, fight those who do not believe in Allah or in the last day, and who do not consider unlawful what Allah and His Messenger have made unlawful, and who do not adopt the religion of truth from those who were given the scripture. Fight them until they give the jizya willingly while they are humbled. So clearly this means that the only way we get peace is when we submit and pay the jizya willingly. So read that again. Jizya willingly. Otherwise, we must be humbled. How are we humbled? Through battle.
It's simple. So then when you see harm now being committed, when you see people being abused, when you see young girls being exploited and groomed, when you see people being sold drugs, when whatever type of harm it is, know that it's alien from the teachings of Islam. Mercy runs through it. So the first verses, when you open the Quran, even the Quran experts we've got back home who think they're experts, open the Quran, what are the first words? The Quran starts, in the name of God, the beneficent, the merciful. When we study hadiths, which are the sayings of the Prophet, there's a tradition, which I'm part of, which goes from generation to I have a direct chain to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, through my teachers. So I've read this hadith first with somebody who's read this hadith first, with somebody who's read all the way up to the Prophet Muhammad. And the hadith is, i.e. the saying of the Prophet Muhammad.
The only problem here is that the chain really only begins in 800 AD, where we have the first manuscripts and the first people claiming these chains. So really, these people could have just been like, well, this guy heard it from this guy heard it from this guy, this guy heard it from this guy, and then I heard it from them. All they had to do was write that down, and that's really all we have as historical proof right now. We have the historical proof of somebody from 800 AD saying, trust me, bro.
Now, I know this is going to sound alien to you, because the narrative what's out there right now is completely different to this narrative. It's all about violence and aggression and taking over and abusing. And I hope that people, if they're going to be fair, like I said, open the Quran, see what the first verse is in there.
So if Islam is a religion of peace, how do we explain the Charlie Hebdo massacre and the Salman Rushdie attempted assassination?
Easy.
Go for it.
Muslims are humans. And some humans are psychopaths.
This is probably the last subject this guy wants to talk about when he wants to explain the sadistic depravity that we see through a lot of how Muslims justify Hamas and the Palestinian obsession with revenge and the way that they just refuse for Israel to ever exist. So when you actually know about psychopathy and you learn about it, you can see that there's actually a very strong genetic link here. And you've had a lot of psychologists trying to downplay this and try to suggest it's based more on environmental factors. But from almost every study I've seen, this is what you're going to get in short. In short, genetics play a big role in the development of psychopathy by influencing brain structure and brain chemical levels. So what it's saying is that in order to have psychopathy, you basically need a genetic predisposition for it.
So the way I understand it is an Islamist is somebody who's deeply into their politics, and it's all about Islam taking over. They often tend to be people on benefits and not even able to run their own families and homes. So I don't know how they're going to run a global caliphate.
But you denounce Islamists.
I think Islamists are Fruit Loops, yeah, not just in ours.
But do you think there's far too many Islamists?
Well, they're still Muslims.
The Prophet Muhammad and Aisha. We have to go there. So why did he marry Aisha? How old was she? How old was he? And how many wives did he have at the time?
Right. So the first marriage of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was to a lady called Khadija. The most popular narrative, and there are differences in this, the most popular narrative is that he, a virgin, was 25, and she was previously married, 2 previous marriages, and she was 40 years old. So he married Khadija, and she was his only wife for as long as she was alive, and then she passed away. When she passed away, after that, his first wife after that was Aisha. Aisha was the daughter of an older friend of his who was known as Abu Bakr. So they knew each other very, very well. And we have hadiths which say that the age of the marriage was when Aisha was 6 years old, and the marriage was consummated, i.e. marital relations took place at 9 years old. This is what everybody's homing in onto. Okay? I just want to pause, right? Ask yourself, if this is a pressing question for you, ask yourself, why is this such an important issue? What does it mean? Let's say, assuming, and I'm not saying this, let's say, assuming, I'm not saying this, let's say the Prophet Muhammad had a relationship with a young girl. I'm not saying that, and I'm going to come on to clarify that after. Okay, then what? You've proved Islam wrong? Does that prove Islam wrong?
This really shouldn't be difficult to understand. He is not the best moral example for all time. The proof is that he consummated a marriage with a 9-year-old.
We can't take anything from him. If he's doing that to a small child, that therefore we think he's morally wrong, and we will not take any teachings he brings us about God or about how we should live our life. Is that what it's about? Okay, fair enough. Right, now let's go a little bit deeper. There's the science of hadith, which is what I've mentioned. And by the way, the hadiths which mention the ages of 6 and 9, they're considered to be sahih hadith. So they're authentic in their chains of transmission.
Which basically means that you need to throw all of the hadiths out if you accept this one, because it's graded the most authentic a hadith can be. So if this one is no good, then all of the others are basically no good either. Quite a conundrum you have yourselves in, Muslims.
So what that means is every person who's transmitted this information all the way back to the Prophet can be vouched for. It's a reliable chain of transmission. As to the actual content of the hadith, that's a different story. There are different rules involved. However, there's another science in Islam which is called seerah. This is the science of biography, i.e. timescales and timelines, and looking at. And people have put together the age of her sister, and when she's described when certain things have happened. And if you go down that path, then it takes Aisha from 18 to 20 years old at that time. So it's not as straightforward as it seems. Now, this is the, and I'm not trying to be clever here. I'm just saying that whichever opinion you go with, or whichever you kind of guess that was her age, in that time, the time that they were living, she was a woman. She wasn't a child. Because the Prophet Muhammad himself taught that it's forbidden to have sex between whether it's a boy or whether it's a girl before the age of puberty. At that time, that's what adulthood was. As soon as you reach puberty, whether you're a boy, whether you're a girl, whether you're 15 or whether you're 13, at that time you're considered now an adult. That's the way it works. Nobody in the time of the Prophet Muhammad criticized him for this. It wasn't a moral issue back then, and I think it's a bit. I don't think it's fair to take moral standards what we have today, and apply them to a situation which happened 1,500 years ago.
But it is, sir, because you're claiming that your prophet was the best moral example for all time, not just for his time frame. That is the main issue, is that you tell people to follow in his footsteps. And what are his footsteps?
When it comes to Islamic law, we have, so the vast majority of Muslim countries, just for the record, who follow Sharia or whose laws are based on Sharia will have 18 as the age of consent, or some have 16, and that's the whole point. It's forbidden. It's forbidden to have sex with a child.
Too bad that's not what we're finding in Iraq right now. They just recently passed a law allowing this.
Obviously, the definition of what a child was back then is different to what a child is now, because a child in our times is somebody who's under 18, right? Whether they've reached puberty or not, it doesn't matter. 18 is the key age. Go back 200 years ago, it wouldn't even have been an issue here in this country. That's 200 years. So never mind 1,500.
So let's just say we're living in hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. So is it fair to say that, let's just say, a 56-year-old man, for example, as I believe the Prophet was when he consummated the marriage, sounds insane me even saying it out loud. But
I hear what you're saying. But back then, there was nothing remotely strange or unusual about it.
That's not true. That's why we have a minimum age of 12 in Judaism for female women and not 9.
Okay, it's a good job I wasn't about back then.
No, if you were about back then, you would have probably had a 12-year-old wife as well. Look at Mary. Look at Mary in the Bible.
I don't agree. See, this is the beauty.
I know you don't believe.
I don't agree or believe in any of it. I think the whole thing's fucking madness.
Okay,
but I've finished the question. So we're living in olden times, and is it fair to say that a 56-year-old man could be looking into a bedroom of a child one day that's playing with her dolls, and if she has her period that night, the next day by law he can have sex with her?
I think that's a very spectacular way to. I think that's a very spectacular way to put it.
I mean, the whole thing's pretty spectacular. Yeah. We're talking about a 56-year-old man having sex
that
with a 9-year-old.
That just sounds like a headline for The Sun, to be honest.
But is that the reality, though?
Is
Realistically.
what the reality. Is that what happened?
Is that what was allowed to happen?
I think technically, yeah, amongst their system back in those days, and it wasn't an issue, and it was across religions, like what I said, and I know you don't believe, but the point I'm trying to make is this wasn't like some Islamic teaching, thou shalt have sex with little kids. It's not in the Quran. On the contrary, we're prohibited. It's a crime in Islam to have any sexual relationship with a child, and this goes on to the discussion, which I'm sure we'll come to about grooming gangs as well. Because I've been speaking out about this, and I don't know how people have managed to conflate grooming gangs with Islamic teachings, and it's very convenient for them. But it's like none of these pedophiles, when they're stood in court, being asked by the judge, like, what was it? What? None of them said, well, actually, I'm a believing Muslim and I'm following the Prophet Muhammad, and this is what he. No, none of them have said that. They don't even pray in the mosque. Alcohol, last time I checked, it's prohibited anyway in drugs. What they're piling these girls with. So that's not Islamic, and I find it unfair that people have conflated the two things, and all of a sudden this narrative is like, okay, the Prophet. It's interesting how it's developed. The Prophet Muhammad married a young girl, therefore he was a pedophile. Therefore, because the Prophet Muhammad is an ideal role model for Muslims, and they should follow him. That's why we've got these grooming gangs in Rotherham and in Blackburn and all around these. It's unfair, and it's not right.
Shall I tell you what I think the biggest bugbear is for people of this day and age? I don't think it's so much the fact that the Prophet Muhammad was behaving like a deviant all them thousands of years ago. I think it's the fact that people defend it now. Rather than just saying, fucking disgusting, they say, yeah, but it was different back then. So almost you're justifying it.
No, but what you're talking about is a different time and a different set of moral standards.
No, but today
by these standards, by the standards what you're describing, it's disgusting. For me, how can I call it's like, okay then, does a Christian call God disgusting because Virgin Mary became pregnant when she was, I think it's between 10 and 12 years old when she gave birth to Jesus, according to Christian scholars? Does that mean the Christian God's disgusting?
It's actually 12 to 14 if we want to get technical about this.
The Islamic Sharia itself teaches that it's forbidden, haram, to implement any punishment laws in a land which is not run by Muslims. So if somebody came to me, for example, in the mosque in Liverpool and said, "Oh, I've just shoplifted. I've just been the Asda." They call it the Asda.
The Asda.
No, I've just slipped a
Twix.
Yeah. Can you chop my hands off? Because I want the punishment. I see it's there in Islam and I read it in the Quran. I want the punishment. Can you please? It's forbidden. You cannot do that. So what I said to him is actually
true, but what we're really worried about is you becoming the majority, outnumbering us, and then implementing whatever you want, which seems to be what you're doing. That's the way it looks like to us ordinary folk who just don't seem to know any better.
What you're saying is what Sharia law teaches.
There are certain countries that still stone women, though, isn't there?
I'm not sure. I think it's exaggerated, to be honest. I'm not sure. I'd be happy if people could give examples.
Again, I don't understand why he is refuting something that a simple Google search can find. There's no shortage of information on this, and that it's still happening today.
I think maybe tribal, lawless parts of some countries. I think maybe in certain parts of Iraq, in northern Iraq, the Muslims will stone their daughters for fornication, and the police won't do anything about it. And the Yazidi community, they'll do the same if a Yazidi woman falls in love with a Muslim man.
I find it very interesting that he needed to throw the Yazidis under the bus here, especially when they're the victims of ISIS. They're like the number one victims of ISIS. There's like so many of them enslaved to ISIS. This is really strange that he needs to be distinct in throwing them under the bus.
Do women live a sorrowful existence in Islamic countries?
Yeah. And I know it's in Muslim countries. Yeah, I think there's a big difference, isn't there, between cultures. I don't think it's exclusively Muslim countries. I think if you found a Buddhist country nearby this Muslim country which you're talking about, it's probably quite similar there, or a Hindu country. Or
don't you try and deflect with comparing it to other countries? Let's stick with Islam.
No, but what I'm saying is it's a cultural thing. And I think it's unfair to use examples of a woman being stoned to death in Iran, or women being whipped for driving in Saudi, which has obviously changed in the last few years. But I think it's unfair to use these examples and then throw it as an attack on me in my mosque in Liverpool.
Isn't that exactly what you're doing to Israel when you try to say that you want one state, one Palestinian state? Aren't you effectively telling all the Jews in Israel that you want them to live exactly like these places that operate in these regions which you yourself say women suffer in? Is that what you want for all the Israeli women? For them to suffer like women do in all these other countries? How come that's not in any of your propaganda on behalf of the Palestinians?
Do women cover their modesty with the burqa through fear or through choice?
I think there's a mix. I think a lot of women, even in this country, even the full face veil, I think in some communities it's a cultural thing. And I think for many other women, they choose to do it.
Yeah, many choose to do it. If 3% chose to do it, this man would be using the term many choose to do it. Many choose to do it because of peer pressure, because of social pressure, because of familial pressure, but they choose it. It's just a choice. There's no pressures that are causing them to make this choice.
Well, do imams expel shit humans if they're Muslim, or do they keep forgiving them?
Right, so first of all, it's not the job of an imam to forgive anyone. That's the job of Allah.
I mean, could that be a possibility as to why Islamic terrorists will just keep killing at random because they'll just get forgiven consistently?
No, the issue with them is they don't think they're doing anything wrong. They think what they're doing is holy and righteous and that they'll be rewarded by God for it. And I hate to see, obviously, you don't believe in the next life, but imagine this, the day of judgment, somebody's blown himself up and blown thousands of innocent people up with him, and he's thinking he's going straight to heaven. On the day of judgment, he's in for a surprise.
And what is the reward scheme in heaven within Islam? Is it having sex with 72 virgins? Be honest.
You brought them all today, aren't you? So the descriptions of heaven, there's descriptions of pleasures of all different kinds. That's the reward.
Why has it always got to be
All different
excessively
kinds.
Perverse, though? Marrying 6-year-olds, sleep with 72 virgins. Like,
What about big pomegranates? Are they perverse? What about rivers of honey and wine and milk and meadows and palaces made of rubies and gems and...
How about we look at this tafsir that talks about how you get eternal little boys who serve you in heaven. They will be served by eternal boys, boys who will never age or change, created by Allah for the service of the inhabitants of paradise. It's totally normal, guys, having a bunch of eternal little boys serving us in heaven. There's nothing strange here about that at all. Nope, everybody was doing it back then, totally, and they didn't age, that too.
I know, but we are just focusing on the perversions here.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it's always going to be for like I said before, you find what you look for. Heaven's meant to be a fun place.
Here we go then. Here's a question. What could possibly be fun about sleeping with 72-year-old virgins? Sorry, what could possibly be fun about sleeping with 72 virgins? Breaking 72 young girls in. What's fun about that?
No, they're not even humans. It's like a different... Yes.
Okay, let's learn more about these creatures. I asked ChatGPT, what are the immortal women in the Muslim afterlife that pleasure you called? And apparently they are called her, women with intense black and white contrast in the eyes. This is supposedly beautiful, wide-eyed or lustrous eyes. Now, these are some references to them. We will marry them to fair women with large, beautiful eyes, reclining on couches lined with silk brocade, and we will marry them to fair women with large, beautiful eyes. And there will be her in like pearls, well protected, as rewards for what they used to do. Key descriptions of the houris. Eternal youth. They never age or change. So these are virgin girls that stay virgins forever. Purity, described as untouched. Beauty, described as pearls well protected. Chastity, they are modest and devoted to their husbands. Pleasure, they are part of the sensual and emotional joys of paradise. So these are immortal creatures that just live to basically pleasure and have sex with you. But this is not supposedly a demon at all. No, this does not describe a demon whatsoever.
They're a type, I don't know.
Avatars up there.
Something like that. They're called Hur al-Ain, the coolness of the eye.
And did the Prophet Muhammad fly to heaven on a wingback horse?
Short version is yes.
The 40,000 Islamic terrorists we've got on the MI5 watch list. What do we do with them? Why is there so many of them? And do you condemn them?
Yeah. So number one, of course I condemn them. Number two, what do we do with them? That is a really important question. And who's responsible for dealing with them? What can we do? What can we do to deal with this? So I'll be honest with you. Over the years, I've never really, and actually Tommy Robinson in the, I think it was the interview he did with you, he kind of touched upon this, and he mentioned that he's noticed correlation between these prominent Islamic extremists And there always seems to be some connection with the security services. These people, I've been speaking out for years against them, and the accusation is you never speak up. We do all the time, but the media don't give us a platform. I want to give this message out again that I'm telling you, if we can, instead of fighting each other, if we genuinely want to be a solution to a lot of the issues in our society, there's more benefit in becoming allies. So I can go back to my community. And we've got volunteers, we've got people, whatever the issue is.
You see, the main issue is you don't seem to understand that we are not interested in waiting for you to outnumber us and then do whatever you want to do, because that's not going to work. So this solution that you're talking about, where we help you take out the extremists in your community, that's only going to work if we have other kinds of promises from you to ensure that you will never subjugate us with Sharia, because you could disappear tomorrow and another imam could take your place and everything you've talked about could just be tilted upside on top of its head, because like you said, Osama bin Laden was still a practicing Muslim and half of the Middle East regards him as more of a Muslim than you.
Let's go back to grooming gangs, because we've mentioned it but not gone into it. So in your opinion, is there a connection between Islam and grooming gangs?
It's the opposite. It's the opposite. There is a disconnection between Islam and grooming gangs. And if these lads were Muslims, like they claim to be, and went to the mosque and prayed and read the Quran, they'd realise. So say, for example, what are the techniques what they use, Liam, to lure these girls in?
Well, they ply you with booze,
Okay,
drugs.
Let's stay at the booze one, right? Let's open the Quran. It says, verily, alcohol and gambling are from the handiwork of the devil, so keep away from them.
This is just not realistic. It's like you saying that you know better than all of these Muslims about their religion, and then that's only true if they actually respect you to that regard. And it doesn't seem like they do. It seems like they take Osama bin Laden's teachings much more seriously, or the teachings of ISIS, or all of the other doctrines. And since you can't even call out Hamas for what it is, how does anyone take anything you say seriously?
So why are they using booze? Not only that, we've got a teaching from the Prophet Muhammad that not only are you not allowed to drink alcohol, you're not allowed to buy alcohol or sell alcohol or even sell grapes to somebody if you know they're going to make wine from it.
Okay, if we're going to go what the Quran says, the Quran also says a 56-year-old can have sex with a 9-year-old.
It doesn't.
Is that the link?
It doesn't. It doesn't. That's not mentioned in the Quran. It doesn't say it at all.
So is his consummation of the marriage condemned in the Quran?
No, these are legal details which have developed afterwards.
Just legal details, guys. The difference between an 18-year-old is just a simple matter of legal difference. Didn't you know?
Okay, those legal details then are commonly accepted within Islam. So is that the link between young British children getting raped by Pakistani Muslim men?
No, it's not. No. So if you want to talk about the Quran, let's go back to the Quran. The Quran tells you...
Or just Islam in general?
Okay. No, if you're a fornicator...
Can you, I'll tell you what. In your wildest imagination, as much as you don't want to, can you see why people would think there was a link?
Right, so Islamic terrorists who blow things up, they think that they're justified by Islam.
Has anyone educated him on the first and second Intifada when those exact same kinds of vests were used?
So the terrorists kill people, and they think that it's an Islamic virtue. The groomers aren't grooming girls and thinking that's an Islamic virtue. They know it's wrong. They'll hide it from their families even. They'll hide it from their community.
I think people just want to hear someone just say, do you know what, you're right, there's a problem.
Of course,
let's all deal with it.
there is. We've recognised this. We've recognised this years ago. But when you're talking about, so within our community, it's not with the people who are regulars in the mosque, if that makes sense. These are people who are out clubbing and smoking weed anyway. They're not really that closely connected.
What would you say to any radical Islamist that's watching and listening to this podcast? What would your message be to them as an imam?
So to think that you need to resort to violence and destruction and taking people's lives is in contradiction to the message of the Quran. We're told that, and this was actually a message to the children of Israel, and it's mentioned in the Quran, that whoever takes a life unjustly, it's as if they've taken the lives of the whole of humanity. So when you get taken to account on the day of resurrection in front of God, not only will you be liable for killing one person or 10 people, it will have been as if you've killed the whole of humanity. And if you have this energy and this passion to do God's work, then the opposite applies, because whoever gives life to a person, it's as if they've given lives to the whole of humanity. Douglas Murray, I don't really have much time for that guy. And I don't know how the white British working class are accepting him as some kind of thought leader, because he's got nothing to do with you and your communities.
That's
mate.
not you being a homophobe, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm talking about him up there on his ivory chair.
You mean the one that calls you out for when you're doing Hamas apologetics? Yeah, I can wonder why you wouldn't want to debate Douglas Murray. Okay, bud. Yeah, it's because you don't have any time for him. It's not because he would just wipe the floor with you.
There's more in common, and I'm telling you, you will have heard your grandparents say it. They're trying to turn us against each other. There's more in common between your average Muslim in this society and your average white British working class person than there is with people who are these. Tommy's different because Tommy's from the streets, but this Douglas Murray guy, he's like up there and just trying to play this nasty game. Elon Musk, another one, and
I grew up on the streets too, and I think if this guy knew what the streets are today and how a lot of the Muslims end up on those streets as gangsters selling all sorts of drugs to our young kids, I think they would change their tune. I don't think they realize what's really going on. I don't think this guy really lives in reality. I wish Muslims, like the vast majority, were the people that he tells you they are. And maybe they are when they go to that mosque. But not at their dinner parties at home, not when they're with their relatives. They all wear a mask at that mosque. I can promise you that. They're all on their best behavior because that's how that culture works. So, you got to take everything he says with a grain of salt. I basically dissected a lot of what he said for you, and I showed you with references where he was basically just lying through his teeth, or he was just being willfully ignorant. He knew about the 100 beheadings. He knows about how horrible some of Muhammad's behavior is. He just knows how problematic it is to rectify that with his teachings. So, best to just play dumb, I guess. That's what I assume his tactics are in all of this. So, let me know what you guys thought, and let me know if you want me to do more long format interview dissections like this. And yeah, if you guys do, I'll do more of them. But yeah, these take way longer to do, just so you guys know. Like, way longer. This took me all day. Hopefully you enjoy it. Take care. Remember to like and subscribe. And bye.